Okay, so we're going to finish up problem 337. We're going to start by calculating the fixed asset turnover, and that requires us to know what our sales figures are for each company and our fixed asset figures. So let's go ahead and find sales for Jones. That's 1,250,000, and sales for Smith is 1,000,000. Fixed assets for Smith Corporation is 250, and fixed assets for Jones Corporation is 350. To calculate our fixed asset turnover, we simply divide our sales by our fixed assets and get our turnover figure. Sales divided by fixed assets. Total asset turnover, same thing. We use our sales figure for each company. And this time we use total assets. Total assets for Jones is 500,000. Total assets for Smith is 437,500. Alright, and again with these turnover figures, just like inventory and receivables, the higher the number the better. That means the more frequently those resources are being used and turned over. So you can see Jones has a better total asset turnover figure, not as good of a fixed asset turnover figure, but that's probably because inventory turnover is so high for Jones and receivables turnover is so high. So you can see their current assets are turning over more quickly than Smith's current assets, which would bode well for Jones on the turnover and asset utilization figures. Let's take a look at current ratio, and our current liquidity ratio is basically our current and quick ratio real quick. Jones, we have to find current assets for Jones. Current assets are going to be, let's see, cash. So current assets are cash, which is 20,000, plus accounts receivable, which is 80,000, plus inventory, which is 50. Okay. Current liabilities are going to be accounts payable for Jones, 100,000. And for Smith, current assets are cash, marketable securities, accounts receivable, and inventory. Okay, and its current liabilities are accounts payable, 75. So Jones' current ratio would be current assets divided by current liabilities, and Smith's is current assets divided by current liabilities. So Smith's current ratio is stronger, more healthy, according to this calculation, than Jones. It's higher. The current ratio, the higher the current ratio, the better health or opportunity for that company to pay off their short-term lines of credit or short-term debt. Let's take a look at quick ratio, because that can sometimes help us eliminate inventory as an issue, right? It's current assets minus inventory. So for Jones Corporation, that's cash and accounts receivable. And for Smith Corporation, that's cash, marketable securities, and accounts receivable. Alright, and current liabilities are the same. So we just simply divide current assets minus inventory by current liabilities. And we see that Smith has the stronger quick ratio too, which is similar to the findings we have for the current ratio. So now let's calculate debt to total assets. So in both cases we need total debt. For Jones Corporation, total debt will be accounts payable and long-term liabilities, okay, bonds payable. And for Smith Corporation, it will be our short-term liabilities and our long-term debt, bonds payable, $285,000. Total assets for both companies, Smith Corporation is $437,500 and Jones is $500. So to calculate debt to total assets, we just take our total debt figure, divide that by the amount of assets we have, and that gives us our debt to total assets ratio. And you can see that in this case Smith is more leveraged. Okay, we normally would represent these in terms of percentages, so let's go ahead and format these. You can see Jones is quite a bit less leveraged than Smith. Okay, so that would indicate Smith is using a substantial amount of debt in comparison to Jones. So they're much more leveraged. Let's take a look at times interest earned. We need earnings before interest and taxes. That's IBIT. Their earnings before interest and taxes. So let's take a look and see if we can get, that would be operating profit. Operating profit for Smith Corporation would be $126,000. And operating profit for Jones Corporation would be $193,000. And then interest for Jones Corporation is $8,000. And interest for Smith Corporation is $21,000. So let's see what our times interest earned calculation shows here. This is earnings divided by interest, 24 times, plus earnings divided by interest, 6 times. So again, you can see the same thing here. Jones is much less leveraged, and therefore its times interest earned calculation is much higher because it has such a low interest expense. And Smith is much more highly leveraged, therefore its times interest earned calculation is much lower because of its interest expense in comparison to its earnings. Finally, let's calculate our fixed charge coverage ratio. This is income before fixed charges and taxes. So we have income before fixed charges, which would be interest, income before interest and taxes, And we're given some other information too. Looks like selling and administrative expense for both companies includes $7,000 in lease payments. So income before fixed charges and taxes would be for Jones Corporation operating profit of 193 plus the $7,000 lease payment. And for Smith, it's the same thing, operating profit of 126 plus adding back that lease payment of $7,000. Okay, now fixed charges are going to be interest plus capital lease payments. So we have for Jones Corporation, we have $8,000 in interest and a $7,000 lease payment. And for Smith Corporation, we have $21,000 in interest and a $7,000 lease payment expense. Oops. So now we can calculate our fixed charge coverage, which would be 200,000 divided by and again we see the same kind of thing here because of Smith's leveraged position. Their fixed charge coverage ratio is quite a bit less than Jones. So now we're ready to analyze this information to determine the health of each of these companies.